Thank you so much today for signing on to watch 5-Star State of Mind. This presentation is all about achieving a great reputation online and maintaining that great reputation. My name is Emily Washcovick, and I'm Yelp's small business expert. I've been with the company since 2014, and I often say that if I don't know the answer to a question, I can certainly introduce you to someone at the company who does. So please jot down my email address. Whether it's later today that you have a question, next week, in a month, you can always shoot it over to me. And again, if I don't have the answer or the resource, I will certainly point you in the right direction. Today, we're going to talk all about reviews. And in that vein, I wanted to point you to a new podcast that launched during the pandemic with Yelp and Entrepreneur Magazine. It's called Behind the Review. And every week, I feature conversations with a reviewer as well as a business owner that they wrote a Yelp review for. So it really gives that color and context behind that consumer and entrepreneur interaction and engagement, and gives great advice for how to maintain and manage a great online reputation. So if you open the camera on your phone and hold it over that QR code, you'll be taken to the show in whatever podcast platform you normally use. So that's great for anyone that wants to hear firsthand from business owners about what they do when it comes to their online reputation. I also would be remiss to do a Yelp presentation about reviews without pointing you to our trust and safety site. Yelp's trust and safety has been of the utmost importance ever since we first became a website. And it wasn't long after Yelp launched, actually, that we saw our first obviously fake review. In that instance, it was a business owner giving themselves 5 stars, but we've seen everything. People writing 1-star reviews for their competition, people having friends and family write tons of great reviews for them. And so in the very early days, we determined that we needed a way to moderate content on the site. And at Yelp, we approach content moderation two-pronged. One is through our algorithm and review recommendation software. I'll talk a little bit more throughout this presentation about how that works. And the other is our human team. So we do have a real team of experts at Yelp who do content moderation, and when you flag a review on Yelp, that is sent directly to them. So we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of that, but I need to lay that framework and remind you that that review recommendation software and everything we do on the site as it relates to content moderation is to protect you as a business owner as well as our consumer audience. So we're all about that even playing field and having a platform with real and authentic content on it. Now, if you joined this presentation today and tuned in, you care about your online reputation, right? This topic was attractive to you because you want to understand how to maybe manage or maintain that reputation. And I'm here to tell you that everyone can do it, no matter where you're currently at, but it starts with your mentality. And I think that's really important because we have to remember reviews and feedback, no matter what platform they're on or what format they come in, can be hard to hear, right? And I recently did an interview with a business owner where they told me, you know, Emily, the hardest part about being a business owner for me was opening my work up to criticism. And I think whether we acknowledge it or not, each one of you as a business owner has had to do that when you opened your doors or started your business and started seeing clients. And so just remember that as we go through the content today, I'm going to give you very tactical ways to have a great online reputation and how to manage it and maintain it. But a lot of this is about the emotional approach too, and getting over that hump of fear and getting to a place of acknowledging that if your customers are talking about you online, you want to be a part of that conversation. So let's take it back. Let's think to ourselves about the way people heard about your business if you've been around for 10 or more years. There was the Yellow Pages, right? Which essentially is Yelp in big book form. There was TV ads, and there still are. Some of you might be leveraging that channel today. And radio as well. That's still an obvious channel that's available depending on your industry. But word of mouth, tried and true. It's been the way you've spread your business, and it's probably still one of the main funnels that you receive new customers from today. And when you think of Yelp, I need you to think of the fact that it is word of mouth, amplified and online. And in today's world, many of us leverage and look at reviews to make tons of buying decisions. And I don't just mean Yelp reviews, right? Think about it. You probably look at reviews on Amazon, maybe when you're deciding what movie to go see or a new recipe to try. I always tell the joke that I ran the Chicago Marathon back in 2017, and I wasted about 2 hours of my life researching long distance running socks. I already knew the brand I wanted to go with, but it felt like a pretty important decision. And if hundreds of other people had already done it and tried things out, why wouldn't I want to see what they think? And I think remembering that and remembering how ingrained reviews are in our day to day life nowadays helps us remember why it's important to be active with your online presence. This quote from Forbes is really amplifying to me. It just really reiterates what I mentioned. If people currently love your service or the goods you provide or the food that you make, and they tell a neighbor or a friend about you, that's the same thing as reviews, but times X, right? And I think a lot of people think, well, Emily, Yelp users are college students looking for a place to get a slice of pizza. But that's just not the case. 69% of our users are over the age of 35. 88% of our users have a college degree, and 55 earn six figures or more annually. And I think those stats are really important because no matter what your industry, health and medical, if you're a home service provider, if you're a retail owner, consumers searching on Yelp have already decided what it is they need. They've also decided that it's in their budget. That search on Yelp is to find someone to spend their money with. And so for you as a business owner to have a great online reputation on Yelp and on all your other platforms, it starts by claiming your listings. So on Yelp, you can do that at business.yelp.com. And remember that by claiming ownership over your digital listings, your virtual presence, you're doing the most important thing, which is setting the foundation and getting your business information accurate where people are looking for you. So when you go to business.yelp.com, this is what you're going to see. There's the option to log in if you already have claimed your page, or to manage your listing or add your business to Yelp. So you'll click the appropriate button and then you'll log in and you'll see a suite of free tools. But let's bring it back now to reviews. And I want to ask you a question. You obviously don't have to answer out loud right now, but just take a minute to pause with yourself. Do you embrace customer feedback? And a lot of business owners have told me in my career, well, Emily, of course I do, but it's much better when they come to me in person and tell me instead of go online and just write a negative review. And I get that. It is better when they come to you in person, when they call you, when they email you, when they give you a chance to talk one-to-one. But the reality is not everyone does that. And also, sometimes they've tried that. And we need to admit sometimes there's a breakdown in communication, and that's what results in critical reviews, right? So in asking yourself that, the reason I ask is because I want us to get to a state where the same approach we would take in person is how we approach online. So the same way that you wouldn't just shut down a customer in person or start yelling back at them, we're not going to do either of those things digitally either, right? And the way I want you to think about your online reputation is, again, it's your in-person reputation amplified, okay? And so having a plan for how to respond digitally is the same as the fact that you have a plan for how to respond in person right now. I'm sure when you train new employees, you talk about customer service. You talked about being available, answering questions, providing expertise. And so we can apply those same tools and methods to our online reputation. Another thing a lot of business owners tell me is, well, Emily, I don't pay attention to my online reviews because everyone is just so negative there. People just go online to write about the things that they hate. They just go to complain. They hide behind their keyboard. That is true for some people. But on Yelp, nearly 80% of our reviews are positive, and there is more 5-star reviews than 1, 2, and 3-star reviews combined. Because consumers are more often going to the platform to share places they love, to share experiences that stand out and are memorable. But negative experiences happen. And I'm sure you've all been on the consumer end of a negative experience before. That doesn't mean the business is the worst, right? But in this world we live in, where online reviews exist and they're referenced by consumers, we need to look at this platform as an opportunity to reflect our customer service practices. Now, for all my readers out there, I always recommend this book. It is such a great read. It's called Hug Your Haters by Jay Baer. And it really talks about the power and value of having a strategy for responding. And while it might seem overwhelming, the importance of answering every complaint in every channel every time. And we're going to break it down so that it's not overwhelming and you don't have to do it fresh every time. You'll have a playbook, you'll have a plan, and that makes it easier to move forward and do it more from a strategic sense than an emotional sense. So this book is great. It gives you a lot of reference on how you can approach your online reputation, but it also talks about leveraging your engagement opportunities to show who you are, to reflect your brand and your business. We've been talking about this word of mouth as free marketing, right? So if a great positive review is like a digital billboard shouting from the rooftops how great you are to all the people who might need your good or service, a critical review with your response on it is also like a huge digital billboard, attracting customers who might not only see that critical review as an outlier, but also see your response as something that sets you apart and shows that you care about your customers' experiences. All right, so what do I mean when I say actively listen, join the conversation, and use that as a way to build trust? Well, first, that actively listening part requires you to know where people are talking about you, right? So get the basics down, right? If you have social media, Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, depending on your industry, and then other industries, right? You might have an industry specific platform. Claim those pages and turn on those notifications so that you know where people are talking about you. But you can also do things like set up Google alerts for your business's name to see where you're mentioned. And then we're going to get together that plan to join the conversation. But first, I want to bring it back to this setting goals for customer service excellence. I'm sure many of you went into business to serve a need or an audience of people that you thought were underserved. And customer service for many of you is probably at the root of your business. So you set those goals for how you wow your customer, right? Maybe you started a new way to communicate with your customers in the past 2 years of the pandemic, and you can highlight that. Ways that you set goals for customer service excellence then trickles down into those reviews and how you respond to them. So bringing it back to finding out where people are talking about you, this is that reminder. Go to the different platforms and sites, claim the pages, and then use those free and simple tools like Google Alerts to maybe find out if there's new platforms. I was working with a DJ company last week, and they do tons of weddings and parties. And they were telling me, back in the day, we didn't know about the Knot at first or Thumbtack or any of these other platforms that are now in the norm for them. And the way they identify those is just by keeping a listening ear to the ground in their industry and online to see where people are mentioning them. Now, once you start engaging with your reviews and you're getting those notifications and alerts, it's really, really important that we don't just wait for something negative to happen and have a plan for that. We want to use all of our reviews to help our business and to identify trends and themes across our reviews to figure out maybe where we need to improve, but more likely, what are we doing well? What things are our consumers consistently saying they love about us, and how can we amplify that, shine a light on it, make it more prominent in our business model. So think about ways that you can track your reviews and then learn things from them that can help your business. After you've done that part of the process, now you're in the strategy for responding phase. So I always point out that sure, you can decide to put together a plan when you get your first negative review, or you can do it when you're not in an emotional state and before it even happens. What's the old saying? If you bring an umbrella, it won't rain. Same sort of deal with your review response strategy. If you have a plan in place before it happens, it won't feel like the sky is falling when you get that critical review. It will feel like an opportunity to respond and to reflect who you are as a business. I have to point out for any of my health and medical folks on the call today, there is a way to respond without violating HIPAA and to respond while still acknowledging patient privacy. We will link to this blog post in the notes for this episode recording. So look out for that there. And I'll touch on that briefly today as well. But I have to say this up front because no one should not respond to reviews. So even in the fear of client privilege or patient privacy, there's still a way that you can respond that reflects who you are and isn't so much about the reviewer or if they're a patient, but is rather about your customer service and how you support clients. So let's dive into that right now. The differentiator about what you can and can't do is acknowledging if the reviewer is a patient or not. So while they might be self-identifying as a patient simply by writing the review, what you need to do to remain HIPAA compliant is not verify or acknowledge that they are an actual patient. So here's a great example. This reviewer obviously writes about their experience in the ER. And we get this response: our hospital aims to deliver the highest quality patient care. We love to hear about these positive experiences. Thanks for sharing this feedback. This is compliant because everything that they're mentioning is either a thanks or an affirmation of who they are and what they do. So it doesn't say anything about this patient being an actual patient. Here's another example. This person came to a hydro spa. And the response here is, hi, blank. I'm so glad you came in yesterday and that it was a great experience. Whenever you're in town, we're here for you. So this might seem like it's all right because it's not like they go into great details about the services or what the patient needed to see the doctor for. However, this is not compliant because it does confirm that the patient wasn't an actual patient of the business. So keep that in mind if you are in the health and medical or in the legal field, and think of ways that you can respond that reflect who you are and talk about the services you provide or the items that you have available. All right, now we are going to break down a review response strategy for all reviews in general, with patient privacy aside. So I would need to start with the positive because it's what you get more of, right? It's the far higher frequency on Yelp. And it's mistakenly something that I think a lot of business owners think doesn't deem a response. So maybe the thought is, they love us. What else is there to talk about? But if they love you and they took the time to share their experience on Yelp or on any online review platform, that's a customer who it's worth deepening the relationship with. So even if it's just a short, thank you so much for your review, an acknowledgement of a service or an offering that they mentioned or something that they enjoyed, and then leave it at that. So again, this public comment format allows you to acknowledge and thank them, but also show that you are engaging with your online presence. And that displays to future consumers that you care about your online presence and that you're willing to hear feedback from your customer base. Public comments are also always my recommendation. I think they have a lot of impact. But there are some circumstances where it's not realistic. And so in this nothing to add column, I'm going to drop any of the example businesses who don't have time to write a custom 2 to 3 sentence response. So if you're copying and pasting the same thank you every time, you might want to do that as a direct message, because then it doesn't look so canned and repetitive. When you're doing a public comment, you want to take that extra few seconds or minutes to write something that is specific to the reviewer. And let me also mention that the keywords or phrases in your review response help you appear in search results. So it's great to reiterate or mention something that the reviewer mentioned that they love. It's also so valuable to share your reviews. And that's not just for Yelp reviews. Share reviews that you get from any platform across your different channels. So I love it when business owners put a section on their website, or even maybe sharing a review of the week on social media. It's a great way to naturally let your customer base know that you care about feedback and that you'd love to hear from them without actually asking for or soliciting a review. Now let's break down the critical reviews. And I know this is where we get a little bit more nervous, or we don't want to deal with critical reviews, but I think it is so important to point out that there are many studies that show business pages with a few negative reviews, or even sometimes a 4, 4.5, 3.5 star rating, perform better because they look more real and authentic. I think especially depending on your industry, how many years you've been in business, and how many clients or customers you have, not having any negative reviews sometimes looks a little bit fishy or off. So instead of looking at critical reviews as something that you don't ever want to get, let's look at them as an opportunity to reflect who you are and your customer service practices. To me, critical reviews fall into 3 buckets. The first is legitimate. And I have to say, we've all been there, right? Whether it's your business, I've worked at a ton of incredible businesses in my life, and things have gone wrong. When you have employees, for example, that just ups the opportunity for error, right? So, legitimate concerns. Let me just tell a brief story. During the pandemic, it was a little bit inconvenient for me to see my dentist because they're located near our offices in Chicago, and I don't live right by the office. So I would normally go to the dentist when I was in town for work. Well, obviously, I'm not going to the office during the pandemic, and so I would make a special trip just for my dental appointment. 2 times in a row, when I was halfway to my appointment, they called and canceled, which was pretty frustrating and annoying because it was very last minute. So I ultimately ended up leaving them and finding a dentist here, which is a bummer because I loved my dentist. But they are incredible dentists. They just had things that came up. The first time, the hygienist that I work with, son was sick, and so she couldn't come in. That's life, right? The second time, she actually had COVID. So in both cases, I was glad that I didn't see a sick hygienist, but that's an example of life happening and that impacting a consumer experience, right? Now, I'm not able to write Yelp reviews. It is a conflict of interest, but my experience is valid, even though I love my dentist. And so if you ever get a legitimate negative review like that, take it as an opportunity not to be so upset that they went and wrote it online, but to acknowledge that you're human and say that you're sorry for whatever occurred or the misunderstanding, and that you'd like a chance to do it right or to fix things. Now, when you're responding publicly, we're not responding necessarily to win that reviewer over. We're responding for all the potential consumers. And so that being said, that public comment is strategic. Start by thanking the reviewer for their feedback, address the concern that they mentioned, and then take that conversation offline. So again, you're humanizing the fact that sometimes things go wrong. You're acknowledging that you want feedback from your customers, and you're showing that you have this open door policy to actually talk to your consumers about their concerns. There have been studies even done at Yelp that show business pages that respond to reviews on average have higher star rating and higher quantity of reviews. And I think that makes total sense psychologically, right? If I'm looking for a business, I see that they're engaged with their presence. If I have a great experience, I'm more likely to share because I know they see it and read it and care. And if I have a critical experience, I'm probably more likely to bring it directly to them because I know that they're going to try to make it right. Okay, let's move into this second column here of inaccurate reviews. Sometimes there are going to be critical reviews that have inaccuracies in them. Now, we only address inaccuracies if it impacts future consumers, okay? So if it's information that other people need to know, that's a good reason to use a public response to address it. But what we're not going to do is get into an argument in online text with our reviewer back and forth about what they believe happened, what we believe happened, okay? So it's always strategic when it comes to correcting an inaccuracy. And then this last column here is the rant or the rave. And I think it's important to point out, first of all, that consumers are smart too. So a lot of times if they're seeing a business page, let's even say with 5, 6, 7 5-star reviews and 1 1-star, they're going to see it as an outlier depending on how it's written. But some critical reviews are just written in a way that screams alarm bells and screams that maybe the reviewer is the one in question as opposed to the business. So if you're getting a review like that, rest assured that consumers, for the most part, are educated and can identify those. But on the second level, you can click on the name of the reviewer on Yelp and see a full breakdown of their profile. If it's a person that always skews negative, maybe you just leave it or don't respond. Or maybe you send a direct message and try to get more information or try to turn the experience around. But again, I need to close this out by saying, when you respond to a review, particularly critical, you want to think of it more as a strategy to express who you are to the rest of the world, not necessarily to get into a back and forth dialogue with the reviewer themselves. This advice here was given to me by a business owner that talked all about the emotional roller coaster of getting online reviews. And he said, you know, at the end of the day, Emily, every time I get a review, I have to pause. I have to take a minute and step away. And I have to just make sure that I'm not bringing only emotion to the table. I'm bringing strategy. Then I take the high road. Under no circumstance am I going to meet the reviewer at their level and maybe even affirm what they said. So I'm never screaming in all caps in a response. I'm always professional. I'm always the one taking the higher ground. And then lastly, you have to take comfort in knowing you cannot please 100% of your customers 100% of the time. It's just not realistic. And so because of that, we need to have this acknowledgement that critical reviews aren't something to never get or to try to remove. There's something to engage and leverage to your advantage in a strategic way. I want to show you a couple of examples here before we go to live Q&A, but feel free to start dropping questions in if you have them and I haven't mentioned them yet. So the reason I show this is because we know that businesses that respond to a review in 24 hours have a higher chance of that review being upgraded by the reviewer themselves. And this is a great example here because the business owner actually didn't first reach out in a public comment. They reached out directly when they saw the negative review, and then they closed with a public comment after the review was updated. So just keep that in mind, that responding in a timely manner can have an impact sometimes on the ability to get that review updated. The last point that I have to make here is that it's very, very, very important, especially on Yelp, that you do not interfere with the natural flow of reviews. And what I mean by that is you don't want to be soliciting or asking your customers for reviews in any capacity. So you don't want to send a newsletter out to all your clients saying, please write a Yelp review. Here's a link to our page. You also don't want to be handing iPads or devices at your customers in your business, asking them to write a review in front of you. Let it happen naturally. We want it to be a customer sharing their experience on their own. And so some great ways that you can encourage that is by putting links to all of the places that you have online reviews on your website, for example. You can also, like we talked about earlier, share reviews from different platforms on your social media or on your website. Call out that you pay attention and you love reading that stuff. And then also using the phrase check us out on instead of could you review us is really helpful. I think the very, very important point to make whenever we're talking about online reputation, whether it's on Yelp or any other platform, is that it starts with the in-person experience. It begins with what you're doing when you're engaging with your clients offline, and then it translates to that online. But having your business page claimed and completed, which is free, is the first step to your profile looking accurate and appealing. And then being responsive, showing activity, showing your voice in conjunction with the reviewer voice just goes to create that sense of who you are digitally. We have so many resources for you as it relates to how to respond to reviews, examples of what other businesses do, and even other topics that have nothing to do with Yelp. So if you're looking for those blog type resources or those checklists or those how-tos, definitely check out the blog and click on the business section. I'm going to throw up the QR code for the Behind the Review podcast one more time again, so you can hover your camera on your phone over that if you're interested in listening. But this is just a great example of the types of guests we have on. Chris Good is a great friend of mine that I've known over the years through Yelp, actually. And he owns a bunch of juiceries in Kansas City. He said, you got to listen because these people talking are people who spent money, and their opinion, whether it's, your opinion or not, different or other, has value because they are a client and they had an experience. And getting over that emotional hump of, was it fair or was it nice or could they have told you the feedback differently? And instead looking at online reviews and your online presence as a strategic field of opportunity, you will immediately begin turning around that online reputation and exuding the customer service digitally. I'm going to take live Q&A now, so definitely hop over to that double bubble that you're seeing on your toolbar in Zoom and type some questions in there for me. But I also wanted to provide some additional ways to connect with us. Yelp for Business is on Instagram as well as Twitter. They share tons of resources. They highlight businesses all the time. So it's a really fun account to follow if you're active on either of those platforms. My email is there for you again, if you'd like to jot that down. And then business.yelp.com is where you go to manage all things related to Yelp, including setting up your free profile and responding to your reviews. Both of those things are free for any business owner to do on the platform. All right, let's dive into these questions. If we have not been responding to reviews and comments for our business, and now we want to, how far back in history do you think we should go? For example, should I respond to those in the last 6 months, a year? Really, really good question, and I get this question a lot. It depends on your industry, and it depends on how many reviews you have. So let's set a couple of benchmarks. If the page in general has under 10 reviews, I think there might be some value in responding to all of them, okay? And it could be as simple as, thank you so much for your review. This business is recently under new ownership, and we've just started taking an approach to our online reputation. We hope to do business with you again. Now that contextually obviously is going to be based on your industry, right? But that's just an example of how you could leverage the opportunity to write a public comment to acknowledge that now you're engaging or now you're under new ownership or whatever the case may be. So whether it's been the same people and you're just now getting engaged digitally and you want to acknowledge that and call that out, or whether you're new ownership and you're taking over an online reputation on Yelp or on another platform, it's a great way to interject and let people know that information. Now, let's go to some industries where you might be dealing with higher volume. So if you're in the tens or the hundreds of reviews and you're deciding to set up a strategy now, then maybe you go 1 month or 3 months back, okay? And that's going to be a little bit of a bandwidth question. I also think, though, it's worth doing a read or a scan as far back as 6 to 12 months so that you can identify trends. Because if you haven't been responding or engaging to these reviews, it doesn't mean that trends haven't built up, right? You're creating trends every day in your business, and some of them might be kind of volatile. I know a lot of people right now are dealing with staffing issues, and that can be reflected in reviews. So if you're dealing with that stuff, it's okay to go back or to set an amount that is feasible, and you have to draw the line somewhere. So I would approach it based on your overall quantity. And then I think if you have an overwhelming number, that 1 to 3 month window is probably the most prime. Now, there might be reviews further in history that are an important point you might want to acknowledge. Could be worth responding to a couple of those as well. Okay. I will often get negative reviews that mention specific services that we do not perform. When I flag the review as being incorrect, it's never taken down. Why not? So it's a really good question. There's a few things here. So one, let's talk about like a review is on the wrong listing, because that happens. And that is one of the reasons when you give a drop down for why you might flag a review. Okay. So this happens a lot if you're like a carpet cleaning company and you have similar names as other companies in town, like Cali Steamers, Cali Zippy Steamers, whatever. You get the point, right? It could be a confusion there of industry and business, and you're identifying that it's not you based on services or menu items. Then you might want to flag the business, and you'll be given a spot to indicate what business you think it's supposed to be for. That's going to be the easiest way to get that review moved, is if you can link to the business that you think it's supposed to be for. So that's one set of issues here that you could be addressing or experiencing with this question. The other set is if you are of the belief or the feeling that these are, fake reviews essentially, and they're not describing real consumer experiences at your business. It's worth flagging. It's always worth flagging and seeing what the team thinks. However, Yelp is never going to take sides on a factual dispute, if you will. So it's just not feasible for us as a company to be digging into all of these he said, she said when it comes to reviews and experiences. We also have to remember, like, every experience has two sides, right? So services being offered is one thing that you can, either provide or not. But I think someone's perspective of a wait, for example, could be up for debate. And so in that respect, those types of reviews are not going to be removed for going against terms of service or content guidelines, because they're just not something that Yelp can determine. Now, I will also point out briefly that that is the perfect type of review for you to take great advantage of and respond to in a way that helps you. And so I think the best thing to do there is respond in almost like a little bit of a playful way of calling them out that those aren't services you provide. So I would still start it with my standard advice of thank you so much for taking the time to leave feedback. And then I would acknowledge the service. Let me think of a good example, since you didn't give me your industry in the question. Let's say I'm an auto detailer, car wash place, etc. And it says that I did the quick wash and it was horrible and there was still residue and blah, blah, blah. And quick wash isn't something I offer. I would take that opportunity to say, hey, George, thanks so much for leaving the feedback. I have to say your description of what occurred doesn't sound like it was our business. We don't have a speed wash offer. However, we would love to take care of your vehicle. Here are the 3 tiers we provide. And it's almost like a chance for you to use it as a promo to highlight what you do offer, what you do have. And let the consumers who are looking at your business page determine the value or validity of that review. So don't get too emotionally invested in whether or not it gets taken down, but leverage it as an opportunity to respond and to point people to who you are and what you actually do provide. Okay, let's see. Our next question is from Wendy. We are a nonprofit who has been in the community for nearly 20 years. We only have a few reviews on Yelp and Google, and they're negative. How do we begin the process of getting new reviews without requesting? It's a really good question, Wendy. So first, I think it's extremely important for you to claim and complete both of those pages and profiles. So a big mistake is if you have a few or one or a handful of negative reviews, not wanting to have engagement on the page because you don't want to claim it. Well, that's probably not the best method. What you actually do want to do is claim the free listing, fill out the profile, add the about the business section describing what kind of nonprofit work you do, upload images, which you can upload in a limited amount of, and put information on there that reflects who you are and what you do, so that the reviews are just a segment of that online reputation or that online profile. And then in terms of generating new content, that's where you can leave a trail of breadcrumbs. So for example, if you have a newsletter, you can make a general statement, something to the effect of, we're taking an approach at, claiming and modifying our online presence. Check us out on, and then link to the places that you have a presence. Yelp, Google, whatever the case may be. It's that verbiage of pointing them there or giving them the option of the platform that they use instead of directly funneling them and asking for a Yelp review. All right. Jean has a question. Why do older reviews show up first and newer reviews are buried under a not recommended line? Is there a way to reorder reviews? So I think this question is actually worth a live search because it's not entirely accurate in how it's phrased. So I want you guys to actually see what it's like on Yelp. All right, when you do a search, let's look for movers in San Francisco as an example. And we'll just click a business here. The auto setting for all Yelp profiles when it comes to reviews is called Yelp Sort. And that's right here, okay? Let me also just point out, you see how much stuff I had to scroll past to get to the reviews? Images, highlights. This is why it's important to complete your profile, because so much of what people are looking at when they're looking at your online presence is beyond your reviews. But let's go back to reviews here. So Yelp Sort, that is going to be the natural way that reviews are sorted on Yelp, unless a user sets their own preferences differently. So some people might choose newest first or highest rated or elites, but Yelp Sort is the way our platform is set up as an auto for everyone. Now, what does Yelp Sort mean? Yelp Sort means it's ordering the reviews based on what the consumer searched for, and the first review displayed will always be equal value or higher than star rating value of your page. So let me break that down. If you're a 4-star business, the first review on your page will either be 4 or 5 stars, okay? The other thing that Yelp Sort is ordering reviews by is the search that was done. So let's say I am searching for fish tacos, and then I click on a business. It's going to prioritize reviews for me based on that search for fish tacos. Okay. It's also going to prioritize reviewers of people I know. So I happen to have a few hundred friends on Yelp, which means a lot of times when I go to business pages, particularly in big cities where I have colleagues that I know who work there, the first review I'll see is their review, no matter the star rating, because they're a contact and connection of mine on the platform. Now, let's get to the second part of your question, which is about the recommendation software. So right here on this particular business page, you'll see they have 268 not recommended reviews. If you click on that, you're going to actually be taken to the not recommended section. This video right here is very short and very informative on why we recommend or don't recommend reviews. I'll give you my quick little 1-minute version. This algorithm is looking at dozens of signals, everything from what we know about the reviewer, how long they've been on Yelp, if they've written a review before, did they do other things like upload a photo, did they check in? It also looks at the content of the review itself. So on other sites, people can just give a star rating. Yelp is not a drive-by site, so you won't ever see a review that's 5 stars. This place rocks. That type of content is not recommended because it doesn't really go with the overall terms of service and content guidelines of our site. Some other reasons a review might be not recommended is if it was solicited or asked for. So I can't stress this enough. It is against Yelp's terms of service to ask for reviews. And if you're doing it, you will be battling high volumes of not recommended reviews. Let me tell you 2 quick stories to give you examples of the types of things we want to avoid doing. I used to be friends with a guy who owned a bunch of car washes in Los Angeles. He had iPads right next to his cash register where the customers would walk through while they're waiting for their car. He was not trying to do anything malicious or try to do anything wrong, but by having that iPad there, the algorithm was seeing tens of reviews come through off the same device every day. So how do it know if it's actually a customer leaving a real review or if it's Bob sitting in his office giving himself ratings? So you do not want to have devices that you're giving to your customers, asking them to write reviews. That's also just kind of icky and tacky anyway, right? It reminds me of the Uber, the Lyft drivers that you're having a great drive with, or things are going really well, and you're about to get out of the car and they say, "Can you leave me 5 stars?" It just really washes over everything else, and it really isn't a good feeling for the consumer. So rather than do that, leave a trail naturally. Share reviews on social, put links in your email signatures, have links on your website, but don't solicit or ask for those reviews. The other example would be if you have like a newsletter or something, right? Let's take a dental office. They're probably not going to have a ton of reviews, right? Less than 1% of Yelp users actually write reviews. So dentist offices compared to a restaurant or a retail store, probably going to have way less reviews. All of a sudden you send a newsletter out to all of your clients, right? Please write us a Yelp review. And all of a sudden the page gets flooded with 50 reviews in 30 days. That looks odd to the algorithm. The other thing that happens when you solicit or ask for reviews is people that don't use Yelp end up writing reviews. Now, on the flip side, sometimes, and particularly with service providers, you've created such a memorable experience that someone does go to Yelp for the very first time and write a review. That's not an automatic reason for it not to go recommended. There's far more things that the algorithm looks at. However, the algorithm is constantly running and changing, which means reviews can move from recommended to not recommended and vice versa over time. My mom is a great example of this. She started writing reviews in 2020 when she had a little bit more time on her hands. And she used to get so frustrated because not all of them were recommended, but some of them would move and change. And it's frustrating for consumers and for business owners, but it's how we establish trust. And it sets us apart from other platforms that I know you all know and are aware of, where reviews don't really hold any weight or mean anything because people don't know if they're real and authentic. All right, let's process on to another question. How can we properly motivate our patients to be active Yelpers because those that are not active get filtered out? Yeah, it's a good question. And I think I just addressed it in the sense that you don't really want to do that. So, what you want to do is let people share their feedback on the platform that they use. So your goal isn't to turn all your customers into Yelpers. It's to provide great experiences that then get translated naturally. So, I don't think it's your job as a business to educate consumers on how to write more reviews or to get them to be more active. I think it's just a little bit of a emotional adjustment that everyone needs to make to not be so obsessed with the quantity of reviews. Okay, let's see. I am just joining Yelp. Can I copy and paste my reviews from another platform to Yelp, or do I have to invite each one of them to give their review again? So you definitely do not want to be copying and pasting things. You don't want to be posting any review content to your own business page. That's against terms of service and content guidelines. Same for your employees. So don't have your employees write reviews. Don't have your family members write reviews. That's against terms of service and content guidelines. Also, if it's the same review and a consumer just copies and pastes it everywhere, that's not good either. So let them use the platform that they want. Let them write the review where they want to write it and share it on social or share it on your website. But don't worry about cross promoting reviews to other review platforms. Just let those ecosystems be what they are because they source different audiences, right? All right, let me see how much time I have here, just so you all aren't late for appointments either. It is 6 minutes to the top of the hour. So just a heads up, if you have to run somewhere, we have 6 minutes left, up 5 minutes now. So let me see if I can get a few more of these. We get critical reviews that are sometimes legitimate, but are often filled with a lot of negative emotion and are often short reviews. What tone should you respond with? And should you have a longer response if theirs are short? I personally think that all public responses should be short. Thank the reviewer, acknowledge something they mention, and take the conversation offline. So whether you want to send a direct message and just say, we sent you a direct message, or I've seen a lot of businesses say, get in touch with us and they share an email or a phone number. I actually had a guest on the podcast last week who puts his cell phone in every review response. He has hundreds of reviews, and he said in his 11 plus years, he's only had a handful of people ever call him or take him up on that. So I think it shows such good faith and goodwill to use a response to be short, sweet, and show that you want to talk offline, but you do not need to write a lengthy response. You also don't need to get into every detail of what went down, right? You're just using that response to reflect who you are. We have reviews from 2012 and 2013, good and bad. How long do reviews stay in your profile? Also, more recent hidden, my customers ask me why their review is not counting. Yeah, so a couple things in there that I think I've addressed, but I'll reiterate here. So reviews are going to just always stay on the platform unless there's a reason for them to be not recommended or removed for going against terms of service or content guidelines. So I know businesses that have been on Yelp since Yelp started in 2005, and they have reviews from 2005. And honestly, it helps you. It's more to crawl on your page. It's more SEO value. So those older reviews, good, bad, indifferent, have value. So, those will be remaining on the page as long as they don't violate something about Yelp. And I think there's a lot of value in those being there. So I don't think you want them removed, good, bad, or indifferent. For your hidden reviews and for your customers wanting to know why their review isn't showing, I would tell them to watch this short video at the top of the not recommended section. It explains it very well, and it says exactly what I just shared with you, which is that the algorithm looks at dozens of signals, how long they've been on Yelp, how many reviews they've written, did they include a photo in their review, did they check in? So there could be tons of reasons why it's not recommended. Unfortunately, there's nothing you or they can do to override it. The only thing they might be able to do is become more active on the site. So, the more reviews they write, the more activity they take, the more the algorithm knows about them and the more reliable or trustworthy their review content is. All right. 4 years ago, we received one bad review, never answered as we reviewed that review 1 year after it was posted. We guess that there's nothing to do, right? I don't agree with that, Simon. I think you have an opportunity to respond and reflect your customer service. I think no matter how old the review is, if there's just one critical one that's sitting there, not responded to, why not reach out? And not necessarily that something's going to become resolved, but maybe your response is, thank you so much for sharing your feedback. I'm sorry we didn't reach out to you sooner. We've just recently started taking control of our online presence, and We wanted to make sure we followed up with you in case you wanted to continue this conversation. So almost putting the ball back in their court and just identifying that you are taking an approach to this and you do care, and better late to the party than never. I remember 3, even 4 years ago, responding to reviews was just a foreign concept for almost everyone. And now it's becoming more commonplace, but you are still an outlier and ahead of the game in your industry if you have a response strategy. So going back to an old review still has strategy to it. It still is a chance for you to show who you are as a business. All right, let's see. I actually love this question. One of our support staff is answering it live, but I'm going to answer it on audio too. Lately, our family entertainment business has been receiving negative reviews regarding wait time for food and staff. How do you make your consumers understand that due to the pandemic and supply chain, we're facing difficulties recruiting and keeping staff as well as performing efficiently pre-pandemic? I think a lot of this is all about communication and proactive communication and expectation setting. So it is no surprise that in almost every industry, there are employee shortages and there are supply chain impacts. And so being communicative about that, whether it's on your website, whether it's in opening conversations with clients. So, if you own a brick and mortar and they're coming into your business for service, having a blatant sign right on the front door: we are short-staffed today. I think there are a ton of effective ways that you can spread that message and ask for patience, ask for understanding, ask for a little leeway and grace period. And you know what? There's still going to be those negative Nancy's, but with your proactiveness, you'll also have your champions who are shouting from the rooftops how well you're doing, even given the circumstance. So I say signage, communication on your website, communication on social media, set the expectations so customers don't feel blindsided by the experience and don't feel let down.